I was born in 1957 in Shelburne Falls. Everybody been to Shelburne Falls?
I have. I grew up in Ireland.
Oh, there you go. Yep, that's right in the general neighborhood.
Wow.
And you know, I was the oldest of 6 kids. You know, we in those days, you know, you'd leave the house in the morning, and Mom would say, you know, be back by dark.
Yeah.
Right? Right? You didn't have to worry about the kids.
Harry Staples. It's Harry's. Had a little power plant.
There was a. I used to play down in the potholes down there. Not the street potholes. This is glacial potholes. The largest collection in North America. Yeah.
Wow.
That was open. Those are all closed off now. But in those days, you know, you could take care of a family on one income, right? You didn't have to have both parents out working just to barely get by. The economy was booming. All the factories were running, right? You drive around Massachusetts right now, and there's all these old, you know, still good brick buildings that are empty, or they've been turned into art lofts, or you know, or condos or something. And all of those jobs left Massachusetts, not to go to China, but to go somewhere else in America because they got driven out by the left. Taxation, weaponized environmental policies, just over-regulation, hostility to business, and we lost. We had I don't know how many blue chip companies here in Massachusetts. They're almost all gone. Right, one of the last, Smith & Wesson. Right, everything, paper. Right, we were like had the world standard for paper. Right, all those paper mills that you see everywhere, they're all shut down. And now, every time you go to Staples to buy a ream of paper, it costs like 10 times as much as it ought to, because there's a monopoly on it with just a few big companies. But because all the competition is gone, and everything got pushed out, and all this happened because of the left. Liberalism killed Massachusetts. You know, I was a child of the 60s and 70s, and I was part of the problem. Right? You can blame part of it on me, although I was just a kid. You know, I was one of the useful idiots, you know, that Vladimir Lenin talked about. People going along with policies that work against themselves. Like all these kids. Remember the kids in the March for Our Lives nonsense? I call it the Marx for Our Lives, because it's really just Marxism. Taking these kids, brainwashing them with politically correct leftist ideology, and then marching them through the streets against their own constitutional rights established in the Bill of Rights. Right? I'm a constitutional law attorney and a pastor. I'm an anti-corruption candidate, and I am working to restore the kind of culture that we had back in the 1950s. You know, it wasn't a perfect society, but it was so much better in so many ways than things are today.
Can you give us an example of what rights they are marching against if they don't know?
Second Amendment.
Example.
Well, the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, really it's a right to self-defense.
Yeah.
The Bill of Rights is mostly focused on what are called, really the Founding Fathers called natural rights. Right? And the Declaration of Independence talks about the laws of nature and nature's God. You know, we hold these truths to be what truths? The truths of nature, of the God of nature and nature's God, to be self-evident. Right? Those natural rights were then enumerated in the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. The First Amendment, the right to freedom of speech. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Right? And then on the Second Amendment, the necessity of a militia, right? The people's right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right? And on, all the way through. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way through. All the amendments have significance to us, and they're all being jackhammered by the left. The left is a Marxist. This is what it comes down to. There is a Judeo-Christian worldview that Western civilization has operated through. It rests on a foundation of the Bible. America's version of it is a Christian-stewarded secular society. It's not a theocracy, but it's a secular society that assumes the truth of the Bible, that there is a God, that He created things, that there are fixed physical and moral laws that are binding upon all people, right? And that there is a law above the law, right? And so we're familiar in public discussion these days with the difference between civil law or civil rights and human rights, and people don't really recognize, they don't understand what the distinction is. Well, a civil right is something that can be created by government, right? A civil right is the right to be able to walk across in the crosswalk and have the car stop for you, right? That's a civil right. It isn't necessarily a natural right. It's not a human right per se. It's something that government can give and government can take away, and we together, with our collective right of being able to form the rules we all have to live by, we can make whatever rules we want. The law above the law is about the human rights. These are inherent. It's the inalienable rights that are in the Declaration of Independence, right? It's an inalienable right to life, right? You have a right to life. Unborn babies have a right to life that cannot be taken away. Government can't give that right, and it can't take that right away because it's something implicit, inherent, built into the creation itself, right? The right to self-defense, the Second Amendment, right? That's a natural right. You have the right to defend yourself, and you have the right to defend other people around you, and that's what keeping and bearing arms is all about. That natural right that you have. Government can't give you that right, and government can't take that right away from you because it doesn't have the power. It doesn't have the right to do that. It might have the power to do it, right? You can have power without having right. That's what tyranny is all about. King George was operating with power but without right, and we stopped him because we said enough is enough. We will not allow taxation without representation. We've got that today in the public employee unions, right? Public employee unions are absolutely unconstitutional because it's taxation without representation. You have both parties that are negotiating for the contracts, for the benefits, sitting on the same side of the table. Both of them employees of government serving their own interests, right? And no one is there overseeing the process on behalf of the taxpayers. So that's why we have these incredible, outrageous, exorbitant, $48 billion worth of unfunded mandates that have been negotiated between the parties, right? And no taxpayer accountability. We get stuck with the bill. It actually isn't even us. It's our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids, because those things, they just accumulate vast amounts of money. That's corruption. Anytime you have people that take power unto themselves, and then they make rules that violate your fundamental rights, right? Natural, actual rights, human rights. That's what we overthrew the British government for, and that's why we have to overthrow, through the effective use of the political process, the people that are sitting in the seats of power now, acting corruptly against our interests, voting themselves raises, voting to impose policies on us that go against everything that the Founding Fathers stood for, and fortunately we still have the right to be able to vote them out. And that's what this is all about. That's why I'm running. I could be living anywhere in the world, right? I've got my skill set. I could go any country in the world. I've been to 58 countries so far in my life. I've organized my life in such a way, by the grace of God, that I have extraordinary freedom to just simply follow the leading of the Holy Spirit, go anywhere, do anything that God inspires me to do or asks me to do. And so to do this, to run for governor in Massachusetts, I'm not running for governor because I want to be the governor. I'm running for governor because I want to restore what the governor ought to be doing, right? To bring back an example of ethics, right? For a government that actually operates with ethics, to be able to challenge the journalists, to get back to operating according to journalistic ethics, instead of spinning every single story to fit their own narrative and try to change all the people, especially the young people, to embrace a leftist, a Marxist ideology to their own detriment, right? The judges are bound by judicial ethics, right? Judicial ethics that are almost gone now.
Look at what happened with the Obergefell v. Hodges decision at the U.S. Supreme Court, right? The gay marriage case, right? The most outrageous example of violating fundamental judicial ethics in the history of the United States. You know, every person that comes before the court has a natural right to an impartial judge. Judges that are going to look at your case and are not going to make a decision until all the evidence is in. Judges aren't even supposed to read the newspapers because they might be tainted in their opinion about the facts of your case by what they might read from outside the scope of the court, right? That's the most bedrock fundamental principle. And yet in the Obergefell case, two of the justices, Kagan and Ginsburg, actually performed same-sex marriages, quote-unquote marriages, during the pendency of the case.
I filmed it.
Right? During the pendency of the case, right? Now, they're supposed to recuse themselves, in other words, take themselves out of the decision-making seat for even the appearance of bias. But this wasn't just the appearance of bias, it was actual conflict of interest, right? And they set the example from all the judges around the United States. And so when they got the 5-4 decision in favor of creating something that never existed, a false right, that is not a human right, it's not even a civil right because the court has no power to legislate, and then they imposed that on us just simply through judicial fiat, right? That set the example for all the other judges, but they had already, Massachusetts had already led the way in showing how ethics can just simply be ignored. All the things that are going on down in Washington right now, all the deep state mess, all this harassment and subterfuge and sabotage of President Trump, it all started here, right? Mueller was here. The FBI scandals started here, right? All of these things. Gay marriage started here. This is where we're standing right now, right? My ancestor, Roger Conant, I just passed the statue on the way back over here, right? He got here in 1624, right? The first wave of the Puritans to come and settle this very territory. And he came and established, he was the first governor of Salem and the founder of Salem, right? And they came for the purpose of establishing a different kind of country. And the founding fathers took their cues from them, and Massachusetts was ground zero in the civilization called the United States of America. Really, it has such gravitas, it has such significance and dignity as a country. We have the greatest, the first, the longest-lasting constitutional republic in the history of the world because it's grounded on the principles of the Bible, and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution itself are structures built upon that foundation that embody those principles so well, and where equal justice under law and the principles of the right to keep and bear arms, to defend yourself, to be able to decide what the government should do, that it should have limited, delegated powers. All these things started here. And as always, the devil tries to take the territory that where God was first glorified. Wherever God is glorified, that's where the devil moves in. That's why just over here in Salem, you got all the witches, you got all the New Age, you got all the perversion, right? At the very ground that was named after Jerusalem because Roger Conant showed diplomacy when the company that owned this land wanted somebody else to be governor besides him. And when his supporters were going to riot and fight against them, he got them to stop it. And through this diplomacy and gracious, sort of benevolent influence over those people, he stopped the violence from taking place, and they named this place Salem because of that. In honor of the city of God, right, the city of peace, and in honor of the man who represented its values. That's what I want to do in Massachusetts. And that's what my campaign is about, I want to be able to bring that about. I have no interest in being re-elected once I get in there. Right? I'm not going to be the kind of person that once he gets into office does nothing except find out how to get re-elected. I don't really want to be re-elected. Right? I'd like to have just one term. I think I can accomplish the things that have to be accomplished in one term. And frankly, what does it amount to? Look, we have a supermajority of Democrats in both houses of the legislature. The judiciary is completely overrun with hard leftists. And the executive branch is just as filled with Massachusetts-level deep state operatives as Trump is dealing with in D.C. So what can a guy do, right? What a guy can do is follow the example of President Trump. Take the executive branch. I get elected, I step into the corner office, and from that point forward, the executive branch becomes a fortress of conservatism, right? It becomes a place where the bully pulpit is used every single day to articulate fundamental, basic, common sense conservative values, to teach the young people conservative solutions to the problems that we face, things they've never heard of before, right? Because they don't get them from TV, they don't get them from media, they don't get them from the schools, they don't get them from the music videos, and they don't get them from the Republican Party because the party abandoned those values under Weld. But I'm bringing them back, and we're going to take that executive branch, we're going to clean house, we're going to drain that swamp first, and then we're going to take back the legislature in 2020 by just simply building a grassroots army. You know, if Scott Lively can win the primary, think about this, folks. Think about this. Only 159,983 people voted in the primary in 2014. Think about that. 159,983. That's it. That's less than half of 1% of the registered voters in Massachusetts. Think about that.
That's ridiculous.
Right? Does it matter what the media thinks of you? No. Does it matter what all the non-voters think of Scott Lively? No. It only matters that 50% plus one of the people that actually turn out to vote for me. That's all it takes. Can we get 80,000 people to turn out in 2018 to vote for Scott Lively? I think we could do that in our sleep, right? If each one of us, see, this is not an impossible task. This is the most doable task that you could possibly imagine in the political realm, right? Winning a Republican primary in Massachusetts, right? It's just the pro-lifers alone could do it. Just the Second Amendment people alone could do it. Just the Trump people alone could do it. And those are the three goals. Right? You got to get to the vote. Right. So right here, right now, can I get a commitment from every single one of you? Will you be absolutely certain to get out and vote on September 4th? Right? Will you do that? Okay.
Haven't missed the vote yet.
That's right. So get out there, right? Just think about it, right? How many people we got here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I won't count me. You got 10 people, right? You 10 people, you will find 100 other people, right? 100 other conservatives. You got over 2 months to do it. Make sure they know, right, that I'm running, that I stand for conservative values, and that it's their duty to get out on September 4th to vote. Now, there may be fewer people turning out this year because it's the day after Labor Day, right? So there are going to be all kinds of people that aren't even going to be home. So, but if our people and just think about the significance of what would happen. Think about waking up on September 5th, right? And the entire nation learning that the bluest of the blue states, the most liberal state in the United States, voted for the most conservative candidate running, right? Right? Imagine the earthquake that would represent, right? Right. We'll pray for it. Imagine every conservative across America, right? Let's say you're in Wisconsin, or